Hi there, everybody. Hey, I wanted to come on today to talk with you about something that is very near and dear to my heart. It's also a big challenge of mine, and I know that it's a big challenge of many people out there, as well as Pilates instructors. I feel like we're going to be talking about perfectionism today. And I really feel like there's almost like this inbred quality of Pilates instructors that we just have deep in our bones this level of perfectionism that we're always looking to make everything perfect. But I think that is really an interesting concept because it really stems from really just wanting to give the best experience to clients, right? So I want to talk to you about this perfectionism and especially my history with perfectionism. I would like to say that I'm a recovered perfectionist, but that's not 100% true. But I think back to a story that I was told when I first started my teacher training journey as a master instructor. So going into master instructor training, I'm a balanced body master instructor and heading out to Sacramento. I was just off the plane, gotten all checked into my hotel. I was really, really excited for my very first day of master instructor training, meeting new people from across the country and across the world, really. There were so many of us from across the world. It was just such a welcoming environment once we all got into the studio space at Balanced Body headquarters. And as we're going around and making introductions, Al Harrison, at the time, Director of Education, was in the room, and all of us students went around and introduced ourselves, and then all of the Balanced Body staff went around and introduced themselves. And when Al was talking, one of the things that he said just really struck a chord in me. And you may have heard me say this before, but it really was powerful to me in a multiplanar sense. Okay, so speaking of being a Pilates teacher, right? We can think of things on so many different levels. But one of the things that Al said just quite plainly was just don't make shit up. That was what he said. And it really struck me. The meaning in the moment was, as a lead instructor, make sure that what you're telling your students has validity, right? Like, don't just make things up just to make things up. But also, what that really resonated with me on a different level as well. And really what it taught me besides that, in being a master instructor and to teach with validity, was when I think back on my perfectionistic tendencies and those of so many other Pilates teachers, that we think of everything as having to be perfect, the perfect alignment, the perfect exercise, the perfect routine, or the perfect program, or the perfect whatever for whoever we are teaching. But really, what I want to share with you today, and what really resonated with me from that statement, is that perfectionism isn't truth. And when we fall into those perfectionistic tendencies, it really spirals into overthinking, paralysis by analysis, right? Where it takes so much longer to complete tasks because we're so caught up in making it a perfect experience or creating the perfect program. And so for way far too long, what happens when us Pilates instructors, who especially are HSP, highly sensitive people, empathic Pilates instructors, or heart-centered Pilates instructors, what happens when we fall into those perfectionistic tendencies is really that fear of being seen as incompetent, right? So why do we fall into these perfectionistic tendencies? Because we don't want to be judged, and we don't want to come across as incompetent in front of our clients. So instead, we attach to perfectionism. Well, what happens when you fall into that trap of perfectionism is that you overwork yourself, you overanalyze everything, you often get very overloaded, overstretched, and extremely overexerted in your energy. And we do this all in the appearance of wanting to have our shit together. So if we're just gonna put it all back, like, don't make shit up, don't try to be perfect all the time, right? Because our confidence in the Pilates studio is not built from perfectionism. It's really forged by our determination to make what is uncomfortable a little bit more comfortable every day, right? So today I want to share with you a little bit of my backstory and some things that I learned about being a perfectionist as a Pilates teacher, and overcoming these things, or working towards overcoming these things, has really allowed me to stand here and be more confident and happy and fulfilled in myself as a Pilates teacher. I'm still not perfect, but I am wanting to share with you today that it's okay to not be perfect, and it's still okay to put yourself out there, because if we stop ourselves from really enjoying all of these experiences, then we're not really being true to our authentic selves, right? So the first thing that I want to share with you about my experience is that me personally, I was wearing a mask of knowing it all. And I really wanted to present myself to my clients and my colleagues and my coworkers that I had my stuff together, that I knew it all. I made a lot of mistakes as a Pilates teacher throughout my almost 2 decades of teaching, but never on the exercise realm, because I was overly perfectionistic on that end. But really, a lot of the mistakes that I made were in the interpersonal world, like connecting with my clients, knowing what to say or not to say, how to get my clients involved in things, understanding their psyche as well as mine. And I would put a lot of my tendencies on the clients and think that that was true for them. So going back to, again, perfectionism isn't truth, right? I was actually so guarded about my appearance of having it all together that even if I wanted to ask for help, I didn't know how to ask for help from my mentors, because I was so guarded about making it look like I knew what the hell I was doing. So that was one of my mistakes that I had learned along the way, is I really had to let my guard down and try not to be so perfect all the time, and learn how to ask for help from others and understand what it was that I wasn't as good at, so that way I could seek out more answers. The second thing that was a troublesome issue of mine is I used to think that pre-planning everything would make me a better teacher. I would pre-plan every single cue, I would pre-plan every single exercise, I would pre-plan exactly what I was going to say in every single moment. I'll tell you, I still struggle with this sometimes, but I'm definitely working on it. And I wanted to share this with you, because what happens when we pre-plan every single detail is that takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time to get through that. So I would spend my evenings and my break times and like random quote free time to plan and map out my classes, just so that I wouldn't make a mistake when I was in front of my clients, again, for that fear of being judged or fear of not being competent in my job, right? But then this is where that paralysis by analysis really stepped in. I had it really bad. And I'll tell you, this is one that I still struggle with, but it's loads better. So I just encourage you that if you pre-plan everything or you overthink everything, you want to start taking those steps to pull yourself back from that, so that way you can just be human and be your authentic self in the moment, right? I lost a lot of precious time with my family over the years. As I said, I've been teaching for almost 2 decades now, and my kids are in that range. I have kids age range from 12 up to 23, and there were a lot of evenings and weekend time that I spent planning my week ahead for my students so my students could get a good experience. But it breaks my heart a little to say that I did miss out on family time because of that. And so if that's who you are as a Pilates teacher, that's just something to think about. Like, how are you trading your time and what is most valuable to you? So I wanted to share that with you as well. And then the last thing that I wanted to talk with you about is that I really took other people's opinions of me to be higher than my own opinion of me, of myself, okay? I did everything that everybody else wanted. I took all of the advice, all of the strategies. I took all of the classes. So anything that was asked of me of an instructor, so no matter where I was working, I went above and beyond 1,000% all the time. And I did this whether I wanted to or not. You know that little voice inside of you, that little instinctual voice that tells you, I don't really want to do this. But that logical part of you is like, yeah, but you better because you're trying to build your career. That's what I did, like on if there could be a hyper overdrive, that's what I did. I took every class that nobody else wanted to teach for many years. I worked every Saturday that was available for many years. And I added every session to my calendar that every client wanted every single time because it was for the client's convenience, not necessarily for my convenience. And I put so much energy into being the perfect Pilates teacher for everybody else. Also for the studios or gyms that I worked at, I did everything that they wanted. I taught everything that they asked me for. I made every adjustment to my teaching skills that even though I felt that they were good and true and authentic to me, I felt judged by them by having to change how I was teaching. And so I put so much energy into being perfect for everybody else, I kind of lost sight of who I was, who I wanted to be as a Pilates teacher, and just as a person in this world, right? I really cared about other people's opinions so much more than I cared about my own opinion. And I'll be honest, this is just a revelation since COVID times. And so that's one of the true benefits that came out of COVID for me, was being able to step back and assess, who am I and what do I have to say and who do I want to be, right? What message do I want to convey to the world? And that's one of the reasons why I'm showing up here for you today, because in my old life, being vulnerable was not acceptable, not just to me, but for those that I worked with. It was not acceptable to be vulnerable and put yourself out there in a very naked way, right? Like to show who you truly are at your core. Like in business, we have to put on a certain suit to kind of present ourselves in a certain way. But I don't necessarily feel like it has to be that way even in business, but let alone in the Pilates world. Because if we can't be truly human in who we are at our core, how can we truly connect with our clients, right? So I want to share with you that being a perfectionist is really a huge time suck. It's not a real word, but it's what I'm sharing with you today. Being a perfectionist robs you of your time. It robs you of your identity, of who you really are. And instead of increasing confidence, perfectionism really increases doubt. And it requires that you wear a disguise of happiness that is a total opposite of your truth. So by taking the long road of hard knocks in my Pilates career and in my life, I really learned that when you make mistakes, It makes you human. And this is what clients really relate to way better than that perfect persona person who's sitting on a pedestal. Because if you're sitting on a pedestal, then your clients never think that they can be where you are, right? So when you are just human and you are exactly who you are, your clients relate to you, and then it makes them feel like, okay, if they can do that, I can do it too. Rather than if you're up here on this pedestal and they're trying to reach up to where you are, they might think, oh, I can never be that good. I can never do what they're doing. But that's not what we really want to convey to our clients, right? We want to convey to them confidence and ability and capability that they can change their life, and they don't have to be perfect to make a transformation. They just need to be one step better than they were the day before. And that's what being human helps us with in relating to our clients, being your true authentic self. The second thing that I really learned out of all of this is that when you can set perfectionism aside and step into your confidence in just being who you are and not being perfect, but just who you are, that your clients actually feel that energy. And when you really convey that confidence, it really helps your clients feel more relaxed and focused. And that allows them to feel that confidence within themselves as a result. And that's such a beautiful side effect of us just being our true authentic selves, being confident with who we are and what we can provide, no matter our level of expertise, right? So even fresh out of teacher training, if that's you and you're watching, or whether you've had 20 plus years of teaching Pilates, when you just show up confident with what you know in the moment, that is what clients can relate to, and it helps them feel more comfortable in your presence, that they can really and truly learn from you. And then the last thing that I learned from all of these points I'm sharing with you today is that it's really, really important to find a mentor that you trust. Because when you can find a mentor that you trust, that has gone before you, that has made those mistakes, you kind of get to fast track through a lot of that information, right? And it really helps you in all aspects of your teaching, not just the exercises, right? It helps you with that interpersonal communication, like I was talking about, like all those things that you're trying to be so perfect at. If you can think a little bit broader spectrum outside of being perfect at it, maybe take a look at yourself and ask, why am I trying to be so perfect at this? What is making this a challenge for me? And is there something within that that I can ask for help with? And then ask yourself, who do I trust? Because if you're a highly sensitive person like I am, or an empath, or a heart-centered teacher that really takes things to heart, and you fear being judged and you fear looking like you're incompetent, right? Knowing who to ask for help is also very important, because if you don't feel like you can ask questions in a safe space, then it might actually backfire on you. So I just want to ask you, what would you do differently in your teaching career if you didn't feel judged? And how would your teaching change if you stop hiding behind your perfectionism? What world would open up to you, and what would you leave behind? So those are some really valuable things I would like you to think about. What world would open up to you if you left your perfectionism behind? And what else could you leave behind?
Thank you for tuning in today. Make sure to like and subscribe if today's video was helpful. And if you'd like to learn even more ways to level up your cueing, programming, and client connection skills, check out my online program for Pilates instructors, Class Design Superstar, with the link below. See you next time.